Welcome to Why I Left, a podcast that explores the Great Resignation. I'm your host, Brian Akar. Join me as I chronicle real stories from real people about the reasons they decided to leave their jobs during the pandemic and what has happened since. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of Why I Left. In today's episode, I'm joined by Antonio Neves, a powerhouse keynote speaker, best-selling author, and leadership coach. With the mission to help companies play to win and individuals break free from autopilot, Antonio's dynamic approach has transformed teams at renowned companies like Google, Visa, and Amazon, to name a few. Through his engaging keynotes and coaching frameworks, Antonio ignites the spark of motivation, empowers lasting change, and fosters a culture of allies. Let's go check it out. All right, welcome back. So our guest today is Antonio Neves. Tony empowers individuals and organizations to shatter the confines of autopilot living and ignite their true potential. With a proven track record of captivating audiences, he has graced stages across the globe, leaving a trail of motivated teams and empowered leaders in his wake. Now, his journey began as an award-winning broadcast journalist, where he honed his storytelling prowess and keen understanding of human behavior. And today, what he does is a great job of blending his media background with his coaching expertise and really crafts a powerful narrative that redefines success and reshapes corporate cultures. Now, as the founder of Man Morning Newsletter and The Community, Tony's mission extends to fostering connections and growth for men seeking to enhance key areas of their lives. And he also has a best-selling book called Stop Living on Autopilot, which serves as a blueprint for breaking free from the monotony and rekindling that fire within. So without further ado, welcome, Tony Neves. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Listening to that introduction, I'm like, I want to meet that guy. He sounds decent.
Well, let me tell you, I always like to start off episodes with how I actually meet some of my guests, because I'm one of those like LinkedIn evangelists, right? So I'm very excited to have you on the show. Your content popped up in my LinkedIn feed. I think there was some type of engagement with a guy named Terry Rice, and you posted something, and I was like, wait a minute. I got to have him on the show. And so I got to have him on the show. Everything you were saying, I listened to a couple of your speeches, and I was like, oh, this would be great to have him on. And so that's how we met. And you and I met eventually in the comments, right?
No, that's how, listen, I think a lot of people sleep on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, I did for a really, really long time. If you're willing to put in some effort and some diligence and leave some great comments, you can meet such amazing people like we met, and I keep meeting amazing people there. And I don't find the same results on other platforms. So I absolutely love LinkedIn.
Yeah, same. So prior to us, talking a little bit about your work, tell us about, your upbringing and really kind of where you call home now.
Yes, well, it's interesting. You shifted from Antonio to Tony because, in real life, only people call me Tony. People only know what this Antonio guy professionally. I grew up as a small town dude in small town Michigan, where I was. Tony Neves, blue collar background. Father worked in factories his whole life. Mother was a secretary for the same company for over 30 years. For me, sports were my salvation to deal with a decent amount of instability growing up. Before I graduated high school, moved over 15 different times between my mom and dad, our 6 divorces total, and there's a whole bunch of other things I could get into. But in the midst of that instability, I found that sports were my structure. They were my saving grace. And even though there was no one in my immediate family that had went to college to get a degree, I knew hearing about this thing called college was something that I wanted to try out. And maybe it was an opportunity for me to spread my wings a little bit and see if there was another way to live life. And so I got to tell you, I love my upbringing. I love being raised in small town Michigan. It's part of who I am. It's in my DNA today, whether I'm in New York City, whether I'm in Los Angeles, where I live now. And it's really forged, kind of a blue collar mindset that I have, and it's made a big difference in my life and my career.
Yeah. And all the bias is coming out right now because I'm a Michigan guy too. Michigan people are great people. Okay. So I, the Midwestern love all the way through. Now you started your career in media, and, tell us how you ended up in that space, and what are some of the things maybe you're most proud of during that time in your career?
Well, it's funny. The reason why I ended up in that career has a little bit to do with my upbringing in
Mm,
Michigan. When I dealt with a lot of instability, I dealt with having to take care of myself a little bit from a young age. I was seeking validation. I was seeking love. I was seeking support. I was seeking someone to say, I believe in you. And TV can be a very interesting drug for that because when you're in front of the camera, people are picking you, and that can be really validating. And it took me a long time to realize you can't let those external forces pick you. You got to be willing to pick yourself, be willing to verify yourself. And, we all were verified the day that we were born. But when I think about, that TV career, I moved to New York in 2000. This is before social media. This is before folks were on LinkedIn. This is when we were still faxing some resumes to people. But I moved there with less than $1,000 in my bank account with this dream of breaking in the television industry. And a little less than 3 years later, I did. And I was hosting a television show on Nickelodeon, live TV every single day. And that went to find myself working for networks like BET Networks. I was a business correspondent with NBC, PBS, the NewsHour online outlets. I did so many different things. And when I think back to those times, like, whoa, how did a kid move here knowing one person with less than $1,000? End up finding this way in this career. I'm still blown away by that. And I don't take anything for granted. I remember, what it was like on the come up when I would
yeah.
work temp jobs in the beginning before that break from 9 to 5, and leave that temp job to go work retail at H&M from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. And then on the weekends, do catering events where I'm serving food to people. I remember serving food to Lawrence Fishburne one time at an event randomly. Uh, but for me, that's what really stood out. And I think what made a big difference in my career in TV was that even though I was a little bit intimidated, I didn't feel like attended a brand name school. I went to Western Michigan University. Not a lot of people had heard of that. But what I realized when I got inside the door, when I got that chance, was I didn't feel like many people could outwork me. I was willing to get my hands dirty. I was always willing to do the unglamorous stuff. And those things really, I think, allowed me to stand out, taking some of those assignments that aren't the most popular, volunteering for things, showing up early, the basics that I think a lot of people forget that they can do to stand out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that story can resonate with a lot of folks, especially around that time, right? So I appreciate you sharing that. I got my origins for this show, truthfully, around the pandemic, and I really wanted to. I always like to take guests back just briefly to that period. So I want to take you back to March of 2020. The pandemic really starts, right? So talk to us a little bit about how it affected you and maybe some of the learnings that you started to pick up during this time.
Sure. As you mentioned in the introduction, I'm a speaker. So I spend the vast majority of my time traveling on the road all across the country, all across the globe, delivering leadership and development keynotes to big organizations, small organizations. And it's funny because as you mentioned that date, I was set up for my best year ever. I mean, the calendar was booked. The revenue was looking crazy. I was gearing up for my book, Stop Living on Autopilot, coming out in January of 2021. And as you mentioned, everything stopped. And it made me kind of really rethink everything because the main way that I made my revenue was on the road. And then those virtual speaking engagements, if the in-person speaking engagements paid this, the virtual ones paid this substantially less. So I had to make a lot of shifts in my business and how I showed up. I will say what that time provided probably for a lot of people, even though we didn't want it, it gave us an opportunity to pause. It gave us an opportunity to hit reset. It gave me an opportunity, Brian, to ask myself, is this what I want to be doing? What kind of shifts do I want to make? And when you're busy, just going, you don't get that kind of pause. You don't get that kind of reset, and you can end up somewhere where you're quote unquote successful. You're making good money, but you have to ask yourself, but am I happy?
Right.
Is this actually what I want? Is this fulfilling? So for me, that was an amazing time to reset. And even better, I have young kids like you do. And that gave me some time that I otherwise would have never have had with my kids. I mean, we were just at home. We were spending dedicated time together. And if I was out and about on the road like I normally would have been in that year, I think the connection, the foundation that I not only have with my kids, but with my wife, I don't know if it would have been there. So, you got to, as a friend of mine once said, he said, you got to use life, use what it's offering, use
Right.
what it gives you. So many of us, and I'll speak for myself, we want to stiff arm life. We want to stiff arm what's coming our way. But a reflection we can always ask ourselves is, how can I use this? What can I learn from this? What's the biggest lesson? What's the key takeaway? And I think, like many people, I was humbled during that year, and probably some healing happened as well with the pause.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And I'm glad you mentioned that because it is a theme that comes up pretty consistently on the show. Because, let's think about it. We weren't alive for a time where virtually everybody in the world was going through the same thing, right? And how it impacted us. Like we're all different afterwards. And so people taking that pause, what I've been able to kind of uncover through the show, and as I'm continuing to read more stories, like people needed that because that busyness of life is a real thing, right? And so we don't take a step back to actually think about, well, is this actually what I want to do? So I love that you mentioned that.
Is this what I want? But also, is a great reminder that some windows only stay open for so long, because so many people prior to 2020 were like, oh, I'll go visit my family and friends some
Mm,
other time. You know what? That dinner party I keep rescheduling on or keep canceling, I'll get to it another time. Those family and friends you didn't get to visit that are no longer with us today, that business you're thinking about starting or that side hustle, those concerts that you wanted to go to, those vacations you were thinking about, all of a sudden we couldn't do nothing. And so
mhm.
it's one of those reminders that some windows only stay open for so long. And for many of us, we wait for those life altering events, those external things to happen. We wait for pandemics. We wait for a bad health diagnosis. We wait to get laid off or fired from our job. We wait to get a DUI. We wait for these big external events to happen. By the way, I'm not saying any of those things happen to me, but we wait for those big external events to happen before I was like, oh, now I'll make change. But for me and the work that I do with a lot of people is that I have to remind folks that we are the life altering events. We don't have to wait for those external things to happen to make the shifts and the changes that we want in our life and that we want in our career.
No, that's a great point. That's actually a perfect segue to some of the work that you're doing now. So look, you award winning broadcast journalist. You were in media for a very long time. How has that background really influenced your approach now as you're doing coaching and speaking? And how do you end up leveraging some of the storytelling to really connect with your audience in order to drive that change?
Yeah, that was the best gift, being this journalist for so long, being in TV for so long, for the work that I do today as an author, as a coach, and as a speaker. You can call me, my bio will say I'm an author of multiple books. It'll say I'm a leadership speaker. It'll say I'm an executive coach. But the truth is, Brian, I'm a professional question asker. I'm a professional question asker and storyteller, and that's what I do. And I like to really distinguish between a lot of people who say they're coaches, Brian. They're actually consultants. Those are two different things. Consultants are experts that tell you what to do. You do X, you do Y, you do Z. A coach is someone that's going to ask great questions, that's going to reflect what's being said, that is going to provide you, sure, with frameworks and tools that you can use to make your decisions. But we believe that you are the expert in your life. During my TV career, I interviewed everyone from former heads of state to Grammy and Oscar Award winners, big startup founders, billionaires, everyone to their mother that lost her son to gun violence. And I learned how to build a connection with people with where they are. I don't know what it is, but I have a gift for hearing what's not said. I have a gift for connecting dots that other people can't see or can't put together. I have a gift for asking great questions that help people unlock whatever challenges or opportunities they have in their life. And so I've been able to use that skill set from a coach perspective, specifically to help people who are navigating transitions in their life, people who are beginning, say, brand new positions. They go from director to VP or VP to SVP, or for those folks who have had a pause or something that is maybe that external event that has hit them, and now they're realizing they're ready to start a next chapter. A quick note is, I think a lot of people think this is going to be controversial. I think a lot of people think they're burnt out. I'm burned out. I'm burned out. You know what I've learned as I've done research, as I've worked with hundreds of people as coaching clients, as I speak all across the country and globe? I've learned, Brian, that most people aren't burnt out. Guess what? They're bored. They're confusing being burnt out with bored, not doing the work that they want to do. So I like to just distinguish that there. Lastly, as a storyteller, if you ever see me speak on a stage, and if I deliver the same keynote, say 5 days in a row, you're going to get the same core messages, but it's going to be different every single time the way I show up, because I'm meeting the audience where they are, whether it's 300 people or 5,000 people. I'm shifting gears in real time to tell stories that activate them, they get them to lean forward, that get them to want to learn more. Again, I'm not coming from a consultative perspective telling them what to do. I'm asking really rich, powerful questions that really make people pause and reflect and help them make decisions. So that TV background, that storytelling, that question asking as a journalist was an absolute gift. And the last thing I'll say, I went to grad school at the Columbia Graduate School of Journalism, where I learned even more about question asking in journalism. But I think most people only ask that first question. That's the surface, that top layer. My gift is to, I don't want the leaf on the tree from you as a coaching client. We're going to go from that leaf to that twig, to the branch, to the trunk. And where the magic really happens is in the roots. And so that's what I have a gift at doing with people.
No, I love that. And I've seen a lot of your posts online, and you do ask some great questions. So I love that. You mentioned burnout, and I noticed that one of your signature keynotes really focuses on helping folks and teams beat the whole burnout thing and really rekindle excitement, right? And I think that piece around burnout being confused with being bored, I love that, right? And maybe people aren't thinking about that enough. But when you think about in this fast world, everything is fast paced, right? How do you believe that leaders can consistently maintain what you like to call day one energy and really motivate their teams to stay engaged?
Oh, wow. Well, great question. There's a few things. First and foremost is I find that a lot of leaders, the more they get titles like director, the more they get titles like VP, SVP, and beyond, guess what happens? The more they tend to isolate themselves. So first and foremost, I want to remind people, no one who has accomplished anything of significance did it alone, and neither should you. The further you get up there, the more we may have tendencies to isolate, and I want to encourage people not to do that. So whether that's joining certain communities, whether that's joining a group coaching program or working with a coach, so you're not going about doing this alone, and you can get some objective support in the work that you're doing. So that's key. I think the great thing about working with someone and not doing it alone or being part of a really strong community is what that allows you to do, Brian, is to make sure you're continuing to play to win. In my keynotes, I talk about the difference between playing to win and playing not to lose. The story I love to give is the example of a football team. If you're a football fan, your team's playing, it's the end of the first half, and they're just kicking butt. And they're up 30-0 at halftime. But then it's the fourth quarter, and there's 2 minutes left to go in the game. At halftime, you're up 30-0. Now the score is 30-28. What happened? In the first half, you came out playing to win. In the second half, you came out playing not to lose. A lot of people find the same thing that are happening in their career. All the things that they did to become a vice president, to become a senior vice president, for some reason, they stopped doing. They stopped doing all those things they did to get that position because they're holding on tight. They start acting in fear, and they don't want to lose it. So I think that's absolutely key, is make sure you are playing to win. So surround yourself with greatness. Make sure you're playing to win. And I think a third valuable tool that people can use even right now as they're listening is a tool I like to use called the last 30 days. And you can ask yourself this question to see if you're still playing to win. And that question is this: based on the last 30 days, if your boss or manager had to make a decision to rehire you, would they immediately say yes, or would there be some hesitation? Listen, your response, by the way, that giggle when I say that question out loud at conferences, there's a lot of giggles. Yeah. A lot of people looking down because they know that maybe they're not bringing that day one energy, that excitement, that vigor that they once brought, that maybe they are coasting, maybe they are on cruise control, maybe they are on autopilot. And it's natural, it happens, right? But that can
Mhm.
mean that maybe some shifts need to be made. Maybe there is a new chapter that needs to begin. Maybe you need to start looking for roles within the organization, internally, or start looking for things externally, or make sure you're doing something outside of the organization to bring you joy inside of it. What's cool about that last 30 days question, Brian, is that you can do that personally too. And this is where I
Mhm.
really get people. Folks, I say, if you're married or if you have a spouse, significant other, a partner, ask the question based on the last 30 days, would your partner immediately recommit to you based on how you showed up? And let me tell you, folks, they would not probably recommit based on the last 30 days. We can look at the same thing if you're a parent, based on how we showed up as a parent. Would our kids say, yes, I want you as my mom or dad? Or you know what? You know what, dad? You know what, mom? This thing right here, that phone has been between me and you far too often the last 30 days. When we look at our health and our fitness based on the last 30 days, are we moving on a trajectory in the direction that we want to go? When we look at our finances based on the last 30 days, are we going to create the type of wealth that we want to create? So that's a great tool. So long-winded answer, make sure to surround yourself with greatness. That way you can ensure you're playing to win, and regularly audit your last 30 days, because it's going to provide you with a lot of rich data that I wouldn't beat yourself up about it. It's
Mhm.
data that you can then act on.
I love that. I love that. I think I'm going to implement that, especially that last one, right? Because I think that last 30 days piece, there's a sense of one, intentionality, and two, accountability that comes with that question. That you got to be real with yourself. So I love that. I appreciate you mentioning that.
And you know
You've
what?
Oh
I'm
yeah, go
glad you
ahead.
said you got to be real with yourself,
Yeah,
because one thing I think, I don't have some crazy massive following on LinkedIn, but it's an engaged following. And I think the reason why, from a storytelling perspective, I'm able to stand out a little bit. And I think the reason why I'm not a coach for everyone is because, Brian, I'm a firm believer that in this day and age, most people, most adults, they don't need another pat on the back.
right.
They don't need empty good jobs. I'm a firm believer that what people need is they need to hear the truth. We need someone to tell people the truth. And we've all been in meetings at work when a colleague isn't showing up the way they need to show up, or they dropped the ball on something. But people are like, it'll be okay. Don't worry about it. No, you need to worry about it.
Yeah, you
We
dropped the
need to
ball.
talk about this. You
Yeah,
drop, but right. But even nowadays, even tell us when they dropped the ball. It's like,
I know.
what?
I
It's as
know.
if that's drama. No, we need to tell people the truth more now than ever. You said the word earlier, accountability. And there's a tactful way to do that. By the way, I'm not talking about being brusque and being rude and
Right.
doing things that are going to get you sent to HR. But people need to know when they drop the ball, when there are rooms for improvement. And also on the flip side, let them know when they're killing it. Let them know when they're doing a good job. The truth comes on both sides.
Absolutely, absolutely. Your book, right? You mentioned it, the Stop Living on Autopilot. It's got some great endorsements. What do you think are maybe a couple key principles from the book that have really resonated most with not only the readers, but maybe audiences as well, that really have that potential to create lasting change?
Yeah, this book, Stop Living on Autopilot, has done great domestically here in the States. It's also doing great in places like Poland, in Serbia, in Croatia, and I can list a whole bunch of
Congrats,
other,
congrats.
thank you, countries. I think it's doing great because it's direct. It's a book that tells you the truth. It is raw. So one of the reasons why it connects with so many people, because it's the friend. It's written from the place of the friend that's going to tell you the truth. And some of the stuff won't always be easy to hear, but it's things that we need to hear. So I think how it's direct, raw, and candid. That's why it connects. Second, I think a key lesson from it is that I share some of my personal stories from there that can be vulnerable. That, we only like to share. A lot of people like to share the internet highlight reels, but I share the real behind the scenes that people typically don't share on LinkedIn. I share that stuff on LinkedIn as
Hmm.
well. The last 30 days exercise is one of the most powerful chapters in the book that people talk about a lot, that send me a lot of messages about. A chapter that people really, really love is this one about taking off the uniform. And in the chapter, I talk about like what uniforms have we found that we wore in life, and how is that hurting us? I give an example of how when I was growing up, the successful men in my neighborhood, they all had the same uniform that they wore. They wore brown khakis, a white button up, a blue blazer, and some loafers with tassels. And I thought that was you can already envision that guy, can't
Oh
you?
yeah, I know that
Yeah,
guy. Yeah.
you know that guy, and I always thought
Yeah.
that was like, oh, that's success because they live on the good side of town. They got a garage. They go on a vacation every year with their family. I was like, oh, that's success. And I'll never forget, Brian, the first time when I had an internship in Detroit, and I put that uniform on, and I was like, nah, that does not feel like your boy. This is not me. And in some shape or form, though, I wore a uniform for many years until probably 7 years ago when I said, I'm just going to show up on stage as me. And what I'm talking about isn't just physical clothes. I was a reporter, and I for a long time, even doing a podcast interview like this, I would talk in the reporter voice like that.
Right.
You'd see a different person, but these days you see Tony Neves. And so a lot of people, they get to have an exhale from that chapter. I'll say maybe something else people have taken away from the book. And I end every keynote by saying this, and this is tough for some people to hear, but other people love it. I end the keynote with these three things. I always say, no one owes you anything, but you owe yourself everything. I say people care about you, and no one can care more about your life than you do. And then I end with, no matter where you stand today, the best is ahead. You can start a new chapter whenever you choose. I think the book that Stop Living on Autopilot makes people realize through this dedicated process that you may be existing in a chapter that has already ended. There are a lot of people who are in chapters that have ended. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about jobs. We're talking about maybe cities people live in, maybe the volunteer things they're doing. And it's time to start a brand new chapter or time to turn the page. So I think those are some of the key lessons that have really resonated with people from the book.
No, I love that. I love that a lot. You also have a newsletter, right, called Man Morning, and a community attached to it. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really focused on helping growth-minded men upgrade certain aspects of their lives. So, talk to us a little bit about the inspiration behind this. How it complements obviously your broader mission of really enhancing people's potential.
Yeah, Man Morning, this is for career-driven men who, like you said, who want to get better. The vast majority of readers are married men who happen to be fathers as well. These are the
I
men
read
who
it.
on the yeah, man. These are the men who on the internet and in real life they've checked off every box that society said they were supposed to check off. Get a degree, get a good job, find a partner, have kids, get the house. They've checked off all those boxes. And then sometimes they ask themselves, okay, is this it? What can I do to continue to get better, to continue to stretch myself, to continue to grow? And as I mentioned earlier, one thing that a lot of men have in common, especially as they get older, especially as they have responsibilities like family, is that they no longer get a lot of me time. They no longer, their work is it's work and family, and that's it. And I wanted to provide an outlet for men where they can get that other kind of new third place to grow. You've read the numbers on loneliness right now. It's estimated that
Oh
that
God.
1 in 7 people don't have a close friend. Historically, men don't confide in their male friends the same way women do. And I've learned that two of the most dangerous words that a man can say when you ask him how he's doing is, I'm fine. Because behind I'm fine is so much. And there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of challenges. But again, because they've checked off all the boxes that society said they should check off, they're like, who am I to complain? So they keep all that stuff inside. And that means their spouse, that means their kids, that means their society isn't getting all of them. So the newsletter, provides, lessons, stories, and insights every single Sunday to the inbox to support folks. But what's most amazing about Man Morning is the community that's happening right now across the country where chapters are springing up. Every single week, Brian, on Thursday, I get together with my Man Morning community here in Los Angeles when I'm in town. We get together at 7 a.m. for a walk and talk. And we talk about life. And we open with two powerful questions. What are you celebrating? And what are you navigating? What a question that we are very rarely, if ever, asked. What are you celebrating? There are so many wins, big and small, we never get to say out loud because we're always on to the next thing. And then what are you navigating? Because you could be going through a challenging time at work or personally. And you can feel a collective like exhale as we share this with one another. And then, of course, we'll talk about life. We'll talk about business, finance, relationships, you name it. And that hour that we spend together is just so intentional. It's so powerful. And most importantly, I'm a firm believer that 7 a.m., 8 a.m. conversations over coffee and tea are way better than 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. Conversations over cocktails, beer, or
Yeah.
wine.
Yeah. I agree.
Just the intention is different. So if there's something I can suggest people do is to find friends that you can go to breakfast with. Find friends that you can meet for that cup of coffee or that cup of tea at 7 a.m. And it's just such an amazing outlet. Without man morning, I think during some challenging times in my life that led to Stop Living on Autopilot coming out. Without that community, Brian, I would have been a bit lost, and I don't know what type of direction I would have turned without having that support.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the content. I am a subscriber as well, and I just love the positive messages that come through the newsletter, and you hear this sense of authenticity from you personally, right? Like, look, we've just met over the past few months, and I feel like I like, what, I really connect with this guy, like I like what he's saying. It feels authentic. And so I appreciate the information that you're putting out there and the content that you're putting out there, especially for folks who, like you said, I check those boxes, right? So that I really do appreciate that.
No, thank you for reading it, and it's a joy. And I have to remind myself that most times when I write, whether it's in the newsletter or a social media post, it's for me first. It's a reminder for me. Again, I'm not trying to
Hmm.
tell anyone how to live their lives. I'm saying things that I need to remind myself of.
Yeah, definitely. Now, a part of the show that I truthfully love and I get a lot of feedback on is really the advice section. And so when I think about, some of the things that we've been talking about today and really where the future of work, quote unquote, is moving, there's a lot of people who have experienced a lot of challenges during the pandemic. And, we're kind of out of it now, right? Out of the thick of it now. But it's led them to make these really bold decisions, hence the show, right? Like either they're leaving their jobs or whatever, starting new businesses, whatever the case may be. So when you think of, let's say, maybe three top pieces of advice that you would give to someone who may be navigating this process that could help them get out of that comfort zone, what would those three pieces be for them?
Yeah, it goes back to something we mentioned earlier. First and foremost, don't isolate, don't do it alone. Find a community, find a group coaching program, find a coach that you can work with to stretch yourself, where you're going to get asked some questions, and you get to have some dialogue and some questions around things that you're considering and what you're thinking about. So first and foremost, don't isolate. I think unfortunately what a lot of people do, Brian, is they think that thinking really hard is going to solve a problem, and it doesn't. How many times have you met with a friend? They're like, "Hey, how you doing?" And they say, well, just figuring things out. Stop figuring things out and make a darn decision, right?
Right,
So
right.
one of the best ways to do that is not by isolating and getting out of your element a little bit. This next thing I'm going to share is going to be a little bit counterintuitive, but it works, and it's something I assign all my coaching clients to do right from the jump. Is I invite people, hopefully on a daily basis, Brian, to go on a 30-minute walk outside. If you have nature around you, great. If you don't, if it's just city streets, that cool. But I invite folks to go for a 30-minute walk outside with no technology, no podcasts in the ear, no music in the ear. Turn off the dings on your Apple Watch and all those different things. And there's research backs what happens when we move our bodies when we walk. And I think what people will find is a couple of things. One, some amazing ideas will come during that 30-minute walk. Two, some amazing problems can be whatever some challenges or problems that you've been experiencing can be solved during those 30-minute walks. Third, a lot of times, a lot of emotion. A lot of emotion can come out that's been backlogged that we haven't given space to release. So that 30-minute no tech walk is something magic. And a lot of people resist it because they can't imagine spending 30 minutes in silence just walking, hearing their feet hit the ground. But I highly, highly recommend people do that. And I think folks will get a lot of results from that. The third thing that I'll suggest, and these may maybe be a little bit different from previous guests. So, of course, first we got don't isolate. Second, that 30-minute no tech walk. But the third thing is I want people to finish something. I want people to finish something outside of their job, like a project or something that has a clear beginning, middle, and end. I don't care if you build miniature Japanese houses models like I do, or if you put puzzles together, or you have a home improvement project that you're working on. Something happens when we do projects outside of our day to day that require our hands. It just something just turns off and allows us to be fully present. And we can solve problems in that, but it adds value in our life. Someone told me a long time ago, Brian, they said a dream job is a job that you love or a job that allows you to do what you love. I think a lot of people right now may actually be in dream jobs. They just don't know it because that job is it like, what maybe they dreamed about when they were a kid, but no, what that job provides them with from a financial perspective, from a vacation perspective, from a benefits perspective, it allows them to do the things they want to do outside of the job. So that reframe can be huge. So again, I would say make sure you're not isolating, you're not doing it alone. You just do those 30-minute no tech walks, and of course, have some type of project where you're using your hands. It's easy to recommend more learning, more courses, more podcasts. The only podcast I'm gonna recommend people listen to is this one right here. So make sure you don't do any of the things I mentioned until after you finish this episode, and you can subscribe. Make sure you get the dings on the new episodes. But I find that those three things that are probably counterintuitive that folks wouldn't think about can be powerful.
No, definitely. And now looking ahead, what trends or shifts do you anticipate in this realm of like leadership development, employee engagement, and how organizations can really better adapt to, let's be honest, the working environment is going to be truthfully hybrid, at least so we hope, right? There's a lot of pushback there, but when you see all this happening, how do you plan to, adapt some of the strategies that you talk about as these issues evolve in the workplace?
Yeah, something I'm pushing a lot for right now, and I'm having the opportunity to lead for these hybrid work environments that are so different. I know folks aren't going to see each other every single day. Those offices aren't packed like they used to be. Of course, a lot of the employees coming out of college, they don't want that type of standard 9 to 5 job, and so we're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to learn. But something that's really important to me is at least at the minimum quarterly get-togethers. We're quarterly get-togethers. You can call them offsites if you want to call them offsites. You can call them learning and development days. You can call them masterminds. But from a corporate perspective, we're at least at minimum on a quarterly basis. You're getting people together in the same space to build, to grow, to learn, to reflect, and do all of those things. And I think if you're not going to have a standard work environment, those moments, that day or those 2 days every quarter, are going to be so powerful for that bonding, for that relationship building, for those connections that frankly could never happen over the screen like this. I have the opportunity to facilitate a good amount of these for organizations. And so we get to have a day sometimes or 2 days where, yeah, the department head or leader of the organization gets to share a bit of a state of the union, where we are right now, what's most important. We get to do the kind of the group coaching, the circling around where people get to share what's going on for them. We get to brainstorm and work on some business ideas. And then we have a really strong learning component in the day as well. I think people just feel really nourished after those, and they want those, especially if it's not the standard 9 to 5 environment where people are going to an office. People are having expectations, and recruiting for a lot of people right now can be extremely challenging. And you got to find
Yeah.
what are those things that are going to make people want to come here and make them want to stay. I don't know about you, but the more I talk to young people at organizations across the country and across the globe, they're not as fired up as they once were just to sit that be anywhere and just plug into a computer. I can work from anywhere. And they're like, I can work from anywhere, but I'd actually rather be working next to a colleague or someone that I can build and connect with. So I want more intentional quarterly, learning and development days. And of course, there's an expense attached to that. You can look at it as an expense, or you can look at it as an investment. I view it as an investment. And I think the money that organizations are going to be saving over the coming years, because they are going to be getting rid of some of those long-term leases. There will be some influx of cash that otherwise would be going to paying for offices they can use to do these types of events.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And my last kind of formal question really is, you got a wide range of experience, right? You do speaking engagements, you write, you coach, all of these things. When you think about the impact that you're looking to make from a legacy standpoint, what do you hope to leave behind?
Yeah, that's great. And I've shifted my thinking a little bit on legacy. I've shifted my thinking a bit recently, Brian, even on the whole concept of generational wealth. We've always heard this concept. I want to have generational wealth where my kids and my grandkids are taken care of, and legacy, this and that. I'm focused more so these days, Brian, on my living legacy
Mm,
and the wealth that I can provide today while I'm here with my family. I want to be as present as possible for my kids and provide them with the things that they need and that relationship building and all of that. So I've I can't say that. It's funny how life changes, especially as we get older. Like if I had all my beard growing, you see a whole bunch of gray hair here.
mm.
I'm not so concerned these days about what my obituary is going to say. I'm concerned what my kids are going to say and the example that I provided them with. Like that's I'm caring about these days. It's funny. It feels a little ego driven nowadays for me, even to think about the obituary, and the legacy. And I don't need my name on a building, at my alma mater. If it happens one day, cool. But I really think about the living legacy that I'm providing for the folks who are closest to me. My wife, my kids, my mom, my siblings. And so, as a guy that used to seek so much external, validation, now is kind of reversed a little bit, and I'm just focusing on what's close to me. Hopefully, that's not a disappointing
No,
answer,
no.
but my legacy is what I get to live every single day.
No, I love that. And what I hear in that is, like, to your point, that growth, right? That evolution, the evolution of Tony, right? Over these many years. And so I appreciate you sharing that, for real. So I love that. And now what I love to do now, and this is something new I've added for season 3, is what's one question you have for me that I could potentially answer? And I'm good off the cuff, so don't be shy.
Oh, I trust that you are. Um, what I'm this is okay. I'm gonna go with this one. What have you learned about yourself from finishing marathons?
Ooh, that's a good one. So what I've learned is that the goal is to finish, right? I have like these 3-tiered goals, if you will, right? One is finish first and foremost, do better than you did the last time, and then get sub whatever number you're trying to look for. And the marathon has a way of humbling you in many different ways. And once you realize, well, maybe I'm not going to get the third one, maybe I'm not going to get the second one, but I at least get one, right? So it's a lesson in humility, and that you come in with the plan. And this season was great training wise. I felt good. But certain aspects of it, when I got out there, I'm like, feet were hurting randomly that weren't hurting during training, and didn't get the times that you wanted, but you finished. And so for me, there is a sense of, and the whole training process. We talk about falling in love with the journey and falling in love with the process. That's true. Like the marathon is like the icing on the cake, but where you really, kind of build yourself up and really build the intestinal fortitude is getting up at 4 a.m. to run 16 miles before work. You know what I mean? Like that, those are the types of things you're like, why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing this for me, right? Because I want to challenge myself, right? I played basketball and baseball in the past. And as you mentioned, right? You grow, you get married, you have kids, and certain things in your life. I can't go sit at the gym and play ball for 8 hours like I used to in college, right? Saturday and Sunday and maybe a Tuesday night. I can't do that anymore, or I don't do that anymore. And so, what is something that can still give me that energy? I found it in running, and running has been very therapeutic for me. And just I'm out there either sometimes solo, sometimes I'm out there with a buddy of mine, but it is just a time where I can focus on me, and I am actually in control of all of it. And so I've learned that it's okay. One, come in with the plan, but have a multi-tiered plan. And at the end of the day, the goal is to finish. So to what you were mentioning earlier, some people, people need to learn to finish something. That resonates with me, right? If I'm going to put in all this time, barring any injury or obviously anything like that, but you need to finish no matter what. And that's what I got.
I love that. I'm sorry. I got to do a quick follow up if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely.
And talk a little bit about the importance. I'm leading the witness a little bit here, but the importance of having something on the calendar, like meaning there is a date that is circled on the calendar. And so many people, Brian, don't have things on the calendar, whether it's that they vacation or that marathon. But what having that target date on the calendar provides you with, whether mentally or just in general, like the difference between you when there's something on the calendar and not on the calendar like that?
Yeah, that's actually a great question because there is a sense of accountability. So at the time we're recording this now, I just got done with Berlin and Chicago. And so you have September 24th and October 8th circled on the calendar. So in the summer, you know what's coming, right? So if you're supposed to be doing a speed workout today or a long workout on the weekend, you can't just skip those because you know what that could mean. Because if you skip one, you might skip two. You can't do that, right? There's a goal, and this actually works very well for my style. I do like to have, well, here's what I'm working towards, right? Like here's the date, and here I know I need to do this in order to make this happen because I want to show up the best way that I possibly can. And so I think there is some power, and I'd actually, I nerd out on topics like this, but I'm very intrigued by, as you mentioned, that what does that mean to have like this I wouldn't, for lack of a better word, I'll say finale, but what does that mean to have this like final date or this expectation on the calendar? What does that do for people's psyche? I don't know, like overall, but for me, it's like it's a goal, and it's like, all right, there's the mountaintop. I know what I need to do now to get there, and I'll do whatever I need to.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And I think we talk about living legacy, like even your family, like that example you're providing for your family just by doing it, not by saying it, not by telling them what to do. Like daddy's leaving to go crush 16. Why is daddy sore? Why is daddy tired? Because he just put it in. He just put in some work on the road. Like, so I love that. I don't know if I'm convinced I'm gonna do a marathon, but you got me thinking now, man. Dang.
Well, hey, if you're in LA, where's I've heard this Big Sur marathon. Where is that? Where is Big Sur? Where is that?
Big Sur is a bit of a hike for me. It's going north. I couldn't even tell you like geographically, but definitely closer to San Francisco than it is to LA.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, well, you let me know if you ever do it in the marathon game. I'm trying to get a couple of my buddies on it, but they're like, nah, I'm sticking to 10Ks, my friend. Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for asking that question. I appreciate it. I love this new aspect I've been adding to the show because, look, when we were talking during the intro call, you raised some good points, and I had another guest who raised good points around, we'd love to hear from you a little bit more, right? And so I love that folks are getting an opportunity to ask me some questions.
Me too. And
yeah,
I'm a question asker, and I love those two answers you gave.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So where can people find your content online and support some of the work that you do?
Yeah, you can. Everything for coaching and speaking is at theantonioneves.com. Man Morning is manmorning.com. And social media place that I'm active the most is LinkedIn. And so you can just go to LinkedIn, Google my name, and you'll find it there.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that. Again, I love your content and encourage all the listeners to go check you out. So look, that'll do it for today's episode. Again, I want to thank my guest, Tony Neves, for joining us today. I'll be sure to put all of his information in our show notes. Like I mentioned, definitely encourage you all to check out some of his work and definitely take a look at his book as well. I'll put a link to that as well. So hope you all have a great week, and we'll definitely see you next time. Tony, I love this conversation, so appreciate your time.
Appreciate you.
Thanks again for listening to Why I Left. Be sure to join us next time for more stories from the Great Resignation. visit us at www.whyiLeft.co. That's whyiLeft.co. And subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.